The subject matter we are discussing is incredibly vast and complex. It encompasses a vast range of issues, and that's how the powerful figures in our world operate. They manipulate and exploit everything on a grand scale. When trying to explain the intricate nature of the system we live under, it can be challenging to find a starting point. We often refer to various systems, such as the judicial system, the educational system, and the system of government. The word system originates from Latin, referring to the organization of society in ancient Rome. The word system was a term used for the sewer. We still call it today. A sewer system is consequently all the systems that we have today. They are in the sewer, filled with lies and deception and manipulation, and God knows that it's a huge subject. The words we use in religion and institutions of government are very important when we talk about the law. Noble. Where do you get the word noble? It comes from nob illilis in Latin. Nob illilis was a word and a term in ancient Latin. For the gods, the leaves were the gods. Based on the old Sumerian word, al du al, you are all you do, or indi was the gods. And in Latin, the word nob was a high way of saying anything I was. That's where we, people who act like they're high, are called snobs, because the word is nob. When you put the mobile, it's too high. Gods give us our word nobility. It comes from the belly, and when you talk about the nobles or the noble ones, they are the ones who are referred to in the old European system as the authorities. They are the authors. They write down and author the law, so they are the authors, or the authorities. So when you hear terms like, the authorities are saying this, and the authorities, my question has always been, who are these authorities who have written the law? And then you come to find out that most of our laws are based on canon law, church law, for almost 2,000 years. Well over 2,000 years, actually. Europe has dominated the whole world, and the Pope has dominated Europe. What you need to understand is that there are two entities in 11. The institution, the Church, the Catholic Church in particular, is both a religious institution and a political one. But its real strength lies in the fact that it is a political institution, and it is based on the raw use of power and the manipulation of governments, kings, and rulers. And when you get into church history, it is phenomenally interesting how the mafia is connected to the very highest levels. The Vatican, occultism at its very highest levels. The CIA was a Catholic institution, in point of fact, because the 5 men who actually founded the CIA were members of orders within the Catholic Church. I don't know if you know this or not, but when out of hit, it was finally concluded that they were, and the German Nazi High Command finally figured out that they were going to lose the war, and there was doubt about it. So they decided they needed to get out of town. Anyone would. And so consequently, the Russians in particular wanted to make darn sure that they didn't get out of town. And so the way the Nazi High Command, and not the real authorities, got out through the Vatican, provided the Nazi passports for all of the High Command to get out, and that was called a Vatican rat line. Look it up in the dictionary. Rat line, it was the Vatican providing safe passage, money, and new identification for all the High Command of the Nazi Party. And many of them were sent to Central America, South America, and the real cream of the crop was sent to Washington, D.C. And they were, NASA as an interesting word, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, comes from NASA. Nazaza and NASA go back to Nazarenes. And when you get Nazarene, Nazah, Nasi, and in the Nazarene call to me, I always start in one corner and just work out because there's so much to talk about. But when you get into the Nazarenes, we're told that Jesus was from Nazareth. Well, in point of fact, it was no Nazareth until the 4th century, and so Jesus would have been dead for 350 years before Nazareth even existed. But there was a priesthood called Nazarites, and it was spelled N-A-Z-R-ite. If you look it up in a Webster's dictionary, Nazarite will tell you in genetic spelling and Anglo-Saxon spelling, us nas zi I hyphen r-ite, Nazi-rite. Consequently, the point being is that the Nazis were financed by international banking out of London, out of New York, Morgan Guarantee Trust, Chase Manhattan Bank, which became Chase Manhattan, Morgan Guarantee Trust, as they said, Citicora, out of the Chicago Bank of America, which was called the Bank of Italy. All of our major banks are in this. The country's finance was organized and helped organize and finance out of Hitler. And consequently, when you start looking at how the church was involved through Cardinal Spellman to promote Nazism, fascism around the world. It's just an exciting and incredible story of betrayal on the highest levels. But my interest in all of this has been the use of words in terms of fascinating concepts that have come out of medieval ideas expressed in symbols. I'll give you some examples of why you have to go to court. The concept now. I'm not giving you a nuts and bolts footnoted explanation, but a general overview. Why do you have to go to court? You go to court because you play basketball and tennis on a court. The whole idea in court has been put the ball is back in the other guy's court, so you get this, quote, team. I throw the ball back over there, and they've got to pick up the ball and throw it back the other way. It's a game. It's playing on the court. How do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. Why? The whole thing is a racket. This is where we get the word, and the people who run the court system are the same people who gave you your judicial system. They've given you your religious system, your educational systems. The entire superstructure of Western civilization is a racket. The entire thing is based on the manipulation and exploitation of the ignorance of the people. Let me read you something out of the Catholic Encyclopedia. Under Roman law, 2 sentences are incredible sentences under Roman Catholic law. The encyclopedia says, quote, the characteristics of earlier Roman law were extreme formalism. That was extremely formal. You had to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and say it just right. If not, it doesn't fly. So it's got to be done according to extreme formalism. From its first secret administration as the law of the privileged class, it expanded until it became the basis of all civilized legal systems again. Characteristics of earlier Roman law were as extreme formalism from its first secret administration as the law of privileged classes, so what we call today, in reference to our languages, the law is referred to as the authorities in the law were first of all can. In fact, financial war, who are the enemies? Well, a lot of people have problems with the IRS, problems with the cops, with the court system. People lose when they go to the courts. However, the real problem is not the IRS agent. It's not, the real people who are dealing with you behind the corporate entities, but the person himself. For example, if you receive a correspondence from an IRS agent, it's not the IRS that you have a problem with, it's the person who's sending you that letter. So you have to make sure who your target for change will be. This book is not about being anti-government. Instead, this book is about knowing all the codes and laws so that you don't violate them. This is very important. We want to make sure that we understand the codes so that we can use them for our own benefit. Now, in the last 60 years, there is a new law in town called the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, and it's the Code of Commerce. Everyone is involved in commerce. If you're living in a society, you're involved in understanding and interacting with others. Basically, if you're going to live in a society, there are certain codes that you're going to have to follow. People tell us or call us and say that they don't want to be involved in Social Security, they don't believe in driver's licenses, or the IRS. However, everyone should realize that if you are in a society and there is an understanding, then if you accept Federal Reserve notes for your labor, if you want to drive and register your car, all these are contracts. Contracts make the law. Yes, you're sovereign. However, you surrender some of your sovereignty when you get involved in contracts. Now, what are those contracts? All those contracts are coded. Coded means there is a certain understanding between people that we agreed upon by contract. After getting involved voluntarily, we cannot just say, well, it doesn't apply to us, or we're not going to go for it. People get into a lot of trouble by saying, I have constitutional rights. You go to court, and the judge says, not in my court. Constitution, not in the court? You think, I thought this country has a constitution. I thought all government employees are under the Constitution. So how come this judge is acting like a god and telling me not in my court? Well, there's a problem. Are they violating any law? No, they're not, because there are certain contracts that you agreed upon, and basically they waive your constitutional rights and your Bill of Rights. The court system is basically like a private club. It has nothing to do with the United States government. It's a franchise to the English bar. They have their representatives, the attorneys, and these attorneys, of course, have permission from the bar to practice law. Now, if you start practicing law, they'll probably put you in jail. The reason why is not because you cannot talk about the law, but because all these codes have been copyrighted by a Canadian company, which is a British company for us. If something is copyrighted, the copyright law kicks in. If you use the copyrighted material, you're in violation of the codes. Attorneys have permission to use the laws. They pay franchise fees. You don't. You have to pass the Bar Association exam and get authorization to use the codes. So if anyone is going to enter a contract with you, you must understand that it cannot be enforced without your agreement. Anytime you do business with someone, meeting of the minds, it's very important both parties agree upon the contract. The reason I'm saying this is because no one can put a gun to your head and force you to sign anything. The court system is the same way. It's a private arena. They cannot force you to go to court unless someone files a complaint and gives their rights to the court, and then the court acts on behalf of that person. The court is a third entity. It's not the main party coming after you, even though it appears that way. Understanding this, you should realize that if you get a summons, which we'll cover later, it's basically an invitation. They need your agreement so that you can go to court, submit yourself, and allow the court to talk to you, prosecute you, or whatever. They need your agreement. That's why when you go to court, the judge will ask your name. As soon as you stand up and tell them who you are, you've given your name to the judge, which is property, by the way. You gave your name so that he can use it without any commercial liability. Now, if your name is copyrighted, you'll have to notify everyone that you're not willing to do business without compensation. And now they have a big problem. They'll use every single trick in the book to get your agreement to cooperate with them. Let's talk about how we got in this mess. We know that God, the divine power, created man. So God is the creator, and man cannot go above God. This is natural law. Man created the Constitution, which is a contract. The Constitution created a government. The government created corporations like the IRS and other agencies. Now, since we created the government, how come today the government is on top of us, forcing us to abide by all these rules, codes, and laws? If we don't, we get in trouble. That's against natural law, if you think about it that way. However, there was a very smart move done back in the 1930s. Most people missed it. A sovereign is a sovereign. A corporation cannot control a sovereign because it's created by one. Corporations are fictitious entities, legal entities, but not human beings. When you create a corporation, you create it for your own benefit. If you don't like it, you get rid of it and create another one. Now, when a child is born, the parents register the child with the state or government agencies. They sold it to the American people as the Maternity Act. They claimed the government would take care of the children since the father worked and the mother cared for the home. To help mothers and children, they passed the Maternity Act, requiring every child's name, birth date, and details. People began registering their children with the state. Before that act, when a child was born, people had 2 witnesses and a Bible. That was acceptable by everyone. After the Maternity Act, people began registering their children with the government. When you register your child, the government creates a corporate entity, your trade name, so that at 18, the person can do business in the corporate world. A sovereign person has 100% liability for his actions. A corporate entity has limited liability and limited power. A corporation can only do business with another corporation, not with a sovereign, because one is limited liability and one is unlimited. It doesn't match. So they created a name similar to yours, but in all capital letters. Proper English grammar doesn't recognize all caps for proper nouns. It's always upper and lowercase. The child's name is upper and lowercase. It represents the human being. The government-created corporate entity is in all caps. If you check your wallet, every document, social security card, driver's license, passport, credit card, all have your name in all capital letters. Those belong to the trade name, not you. You are merely the authorized signatory. If you look at a personal check with a magnifying glass, that signature line actually says authorized signatory. It doesn't say owner. That's because your signature is being placed on someone else's account, the corporate account. So, there are 2 entities involved. Most people confuse this. They think their legal name and their human self are the same, but they're not. You are a sovereign. You're created by God, flesh and blood. You are accountable for your actions. But you surrender your sovereignty when you voluntarily enter contracts, like Social Security, driver's licenses, or tax forms. No one forces you, but the system is designed so that by 18, you're already a good citizen. Now, let's talk about the UCC and what it means to us. There is natural law, then there's common law, then there's commercial law. These international bankers, who have nothing to do with the United States, control the system. Every bank is chartered from England. England controls the banking system, the courts, and the representatives, judges and attorneys. International corporations also control the media, not by fraud, but by money. They financed and bought them all. That's why you don't hear this information. They decide what's broadcast and what's not. So the whole system is controlled by international bankers and financiers. They employ the rules and regulations. Don't complain about it, you can't change it. They have the money. They created the money, and we accepted it. If you want to live in this system, in civilization, you have to play the game. Accept Social Security, open a bank account, get credit cards, pay taxes. The system will force you to. You can't apply for a job without a Social Security number. The last time I checked with the Library of Congress, there were over 3 million law books and 80 million statutes, laws in commerce. These laws are based on contracts. When a judge says, ignorance of the law is no excuse, you might think, how can I remember 80 million codes? It's impossible. However, these codes and laws apply only to corporations. A sovereign, a king, doesn't need regulations. A corporation does because it has limited liability. Your corporate name is regulated by these codes. People go to court thinking they are that corporate name, but they're not. The court deals with the corporate entity. It's not about what you own, it's about who controls it and who has the security interest. Since you never claimed your property, the government assumes ownership, not as the owner, but as the one holding the security interest. As of 1933, we lost our financial freedom to the international bankers. The U.S. went bankrupt. We lost gold and silver and began using Federal Reserve notes, private currency. A Federal Reserve note is a promise to pay, but it promises to pay nothing. If you return it to the bank for redemption, you'll get another promissory note. That's the system, promises to pay promises. So if the whole system is based on promissory notes, we must understand these codes and use them to our advantage.
At glgse7en@gmail.com. Free yourself today. We're excited to provide you with access to the most up-to-date technology and research that have successfully helped numerous individuals in the past. We're confident that they can do the same for you. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions or concerns. We highly recommend reviewing our information packet, which contains cutting-edge and proven knowledge. We believe that access to this information is important for everyone, and we encourage you to share it with your friends and family.